Good afternoon again. I hope you do have a really productive and informative session before the break. Again, I'm Suji Lee, and I'm going to be a moderator for this session. In this session, we have three prominent speakers from all around the world. We have a speaker from Australia, in Vietnam, and from Netherlands. The one from Netherlands, we're doing a video conferencing because unfortunately he will not be able to hear physically. So we are doing a video conferencing. First of all, our first speaker of this second session is Professor Susan Elliott. She is a Deputy Vice Chancellor and Vice President of Monash University, Australia, and she is also with Open University Australia. She's going to give us an open education of Australia with 25 years of Open University Australia experience for 30 minutes. Please welcome her with a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honour to be here. Please feel free to ask me any questions at the end of my presentation or during my presentation. I unfortunately have to fly back to Australia immediately afterwards, so will not be able to be a member of the panel, which is a great loss for me. It's wonderful to be back in Korea. I very much enjoy visiting your great nation, and it's also wonderful to be part of ASEAN. As we said, I am part of the Monash University, which is Australia's largest university. It's a university in the top 100 globally, and we have campuses not just in Australia, but in Malaysia, China, India, and Italy. So we consider ourselves a truly modern international university. Open universities or online or cyber learning has been happening for a very, very long time in Australia. It's obviously a vast country, and for many, many years, probably nearly 100 years, radio has been used to educate a lot of school children who live too remotely to get to school. So we are very committed to the power of education and enabling access to all so that they may transform their lives. Dr. Choidal spoke a lot about the changing expectations of millennial students. I think we need to, just as he said, remember that our university structures and degrees cannot constrain the way that they choose to learn. When I was young, you used to have to wait till the movie cinema put on a movie that you wanted to see, and you would physically go there. You would have to wait until your television station put on the next episode of the show that you wanted to watch. You had to meet your friends. You didn't have a mobile phone, so you had to agree that you would meet somewhere and go there. And then you had to fight for the family phone at night to be able to, with your brothers and sisters, to be able to get a phone call to your friends. We all know that that has completely changed, and so many of you in the audience are from this generation. You completely curate your lives. You develop your lives around you in a way that just hasn't been possible until now. So you can decide to binge on a whole lot of TV Korean soap operas, or you can download movies, or you can have 300 of your friends or more via Snapchat, Instagram, WeChat, Facebook, within wherever you are talking virtually to them. It's a completely different way of being. It means that millennials are really at the centre of their lives, which they curate around them. And yet we bring them to university, sit them in a 500-seat lecture theatre, and someone as old as me tells them what to do and what to learn. And that just isn't a model that works anymore. We need to be thinking about how do we engage students in active learning in a way that encourages them. I said earlier, Australia is a very, very large country, but it has only 25 million people. It's a small population within a very vast land. It can take a day to drive across the size of the properties some farmers have. So they are very remote communities. So we developed long ago an online university platform called Open Universities Australia in order to be able to particularly connect with rural and remote students. It was founded in 1993, a very long time ago, as a private company between public universities. It was initially owned by my own university, but only for corporate finance and other processes. But it was funded by Monash and 8 partner universities and what's called the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission, our large media public organisation. And it was set up to allow university education online. Now there are 7 shareholder universities, not all from the initial 10 continued, and we are chaired by a board, and I sit on that board, and one of our university presidents chairs that board. So there are the 7 shareholders for this company, and we have 13 different universities that provide programs into the platform. And they provide undergraduate, graduate and short course programs. There are no doctoral programs on the platform. It's a company now headquartered in Melbourne, from where I've come, and I hope many of you will come to visit one day. The company has 150 employees. We have 170 courses that are available online. We have 1,400 subjects or units. So a course is a degree. A subject is a single unit subject. I know we use different terms. And we currently have 370,000 students. So it has proved exceptionally popular in Australia. It's interesting, and that was a wonderful talk. Your plans for a single learning management system are wonderful. Every university that's on the platform provides its own learning management system. The reason that was done was because I think each university decided that it would not be able to get its professors to learn its local learning management system and its open university system. So it was agreed for pragmatic reasons, and those who work in universities will understand this, to make it easy so the professors just had to use the platform. I don't recommend this as a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea for the students, but it is a pragmatic approach that we have continued to follow amongst the partners. My own university administers all the exams, which are all still done in person. They are done across multiple venues right across the country. I think we have 80 different venues for the exams, but they're run simultaneously. We are not yet confident with virtual proctors, so that we do personally invigilate, do personally assure the quality of the exams. Importantly though, with the 13 universities, students can use the units that they've done, the subjects that they've done, to go get credit at other universities. Not just the 13 that are provided within the Open University platform, but beyond that. They can take that credit to any Australian university. So this is different from the ACU program. It is within one nation. But I thought it might be useful to share some of our findings because we have been going for 25 years. The students that it's attracting are really very different from your traditional campus-based university. As you can see, they're older, 31. 44% are in full-time employment, so they're choosing online learning that they're doing on weekends and after hours. I'm sorry, that's me pressing the wrong button. 20% come from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, which is defined as the lowest quarter of the economic households within Australia. We have 3.6% Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, which is quite remarkable because 3.6% is the percentage of Indigenous people within Australia. So on the Open Universities, it's the only one in which we have national parity, population parity. At campus-based universities, our percentage of Indigenous students is typically very low. 13% come from households where a language other than English is spoken as the primary language. Interestingly, 37% when they enter already had an incomplete bachelor's degree, presumably something that they'd started years ago, given that these are older students, and that they've thrown it in. They've decided university wasn't for them, but they've come back either for curiosity or career purposes to do a degree. 77% study outside their home state. Australia is very different from the US. Most students go to the local university. You go to the best university that you can get into in your state, but very few, it's about 7% of people travel to another state to study. It is just not part of our culture. Most people live at home while they're studying their undergraduate degree with their parents. But 77% will choose a university from another state, and importantly, 7% of the students have a disability of some sort, so a physical or a psychological problem that might make campus-based learning. So in terms of access, we're reaching out to those from low-income families, we're reaching out to Indigenous people, we're reaching out to those with a disability, and we're allowing those who have not completed degrees or cannot access a university with their state to go to study. So I think it's been an important and successful experiment for us. Very importantly, the students in Australia, undergraduate students who are permanent residents or citizens, get support for their university learning. The government pays about $2,000 to $10,000 per year for you based on whether you're studying law, medicine or veterinary science. So there is government support. Students also pay a contribution of 25%, but there is a government support. And one good thing about the Australian system is that it's $0 up front, so that you don't have to start, you can put it all down into a government loan, and you start repaying after you start earning $45,000 a year, which is about thousand US dollars a year. So until you're earning a good income, you don't start to pay off your loan through the tax system. And if you have time out to have a baby or for illness or travel, you stop paying. So it's a system where it serves those who don't have money up front extremely well. Importantly, students who come into Open Australia have access, which answers Dr. Kim's question, Professor Kim, who asked about finance earlier. For some of the subjects and degrees, there are no prerequisites. You do not have to have finished high school, but you won't necessarily get into a whole degree. You might do an introductory subject. If you do well in that, you can go further on. So it's designed to attract those who haven't had a strong schooling experience, which is sadly very common in areas in Australia. And that is the pathway, as I've mentioned. If you come in this pathway, all universities will recognise the credit that you've been awarded through these. And there are many different ways that you can stack your degree. It's much more mobile than going to a single university. You can take units or subjects from different universities and cobble it together as you wish. If you want, however, to take out a degree, a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you will have to complete the requirements for that degree, but you can put together different offerings in order to get there. You don't have to have done your major at the one university, for example. And I think I would encourage you to try to achieve that sort of flexibility as you go forward. So I think the big things that have been successful about Open Universities Australia, and I know it is much simpler in one national economy with one language to achieve this than the mighty ambition of achieving it across 10 ASEAN nations. But the Open University has given us flexibility. It's given access to those who wouldn't normally have access. We've got opportunities to benchmark and share across different universities, and it's also possible to get a new degree up more quickly because you can use subjects from other universities, and it's got much more flexibility than most models. So this is our collaboration model. We've got a board, as I say, with a representative of each of the 7 universities, and it's chaired by one of our presidents, university presidents. We then have a governance that looks after the shared platform. I mentioned the learning management systems are all separate, but there's a large shared platform at the front end that recruits the students and onboards the students and then channels them into the different programs. We then have operations teams and an academic partnership managers within the universities and academic programs, a senior committee that signs on about other programs that are wanting to come off. But we don't have the ASEAN model of the veto system. We resort to a vote, so you just need 50% or more to agree. You don't need 100% of people to agree. Within Australia, we have a qualifications framework which all universities have to abide by, and in fact all vocational training, so all sub-university qualifications, also abide by this framework. And this has made this very easy to collaborate across universities, and I think will be the big challenge for ACU. So there is a credit awarded to every subject at each university, which is based on learning outcomes, very much still the volume of learning. So the volume of learning involved, whether that's face-to-face or online, is used to determine how much credit in the Australian system you get for a subject. The subject content and the learning and assessment approaches are all within the qualifications framework. So we can easily see at any other of the 39 Australian universities what credit do you get for a particular subject, what volume of learning, how much would our university give to that. We all use different numbers, but it gives us a benchmark and a baseline. But we we have been fortunate. It's a simple one nation system. But I did want to say that we have got at Monash, where we have Australia's largest student exchange and study abroad program. Very many of our students study abroad or go overseas for credit every year. And we have nearly 7,000 subjects at international universities around the world for which we have assessed the credit. So that all sits in a credit database. Students can take those and then they know exactly what credit they will get for taking a subject at Singapore Management University or at Seoul National University or any of the universities that we have represented in the room. The credit is determined by academics. But once they've made that decision, we have a review system to check that the curriculum hasn't changed greatly. But once they've done that system, students can readily choose. So I'm just giving this example as saying that it's not impossible to move across global boundaries because we have those 7,000 subjects are in 70 different universities. So we have, if you take the time to do the work, it can be done. Just as one last, as it's an e-learning conference, I would encourage you all to read the NMC Horizon report. This is an annual report that comes out saying what is happening in digital or cyber education. And I think it's they always look at what's happening in a year, and that's analytics and maker spaces, and we're working really hard at Melbourne on both of those. In 2 to 5 years, at Monash rather, adapted learning technologies and artificial intelligence, very much working across here. But you'll notice the one thing that I thought was the proliferation of open education resources and the rise of new forms of interdisciplinary studies. And I would think that this is very much where ACU is claiming its space. So this is from a photo from one of our new buildings. It has just won 3 national awards for teaching innovation. And remarkably, we've shown that students who learn in this building do better academically, but they're also twice as likely to attend class. So I'm particularly proud of the building that we've designed, and I encourage you all to visit. I think we have 10 minutes and leave for questions, so please, if there's anything you would like to ask, please do. Certainly.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for your informative presentation. I might have missed your point during your presentation, but what I'm curious about is, it seems to me that OUA is giving a really flexibility for your students to select courses for credits, right? So when they accumulate their courses for credits, and they can select courses from various cooperative universities, right? Then who is going to authorize the degree? You eventually come out with a degree from one of the 13 universities. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. Some students choose not to take out a degree. Some students might decide to do language or other studies, French Revolution, Chinese studies out of interest, and they don't want to get a bachelor or master's degree. But those who do must fulfil the degree requirements of the degree with which they study the most. So they will take out one of the 13 university degrees. So it's not an open university degree, it's a Monash degree or a Swinburne degree or a Deakin degree.
but they can use multiple subjects to achieve those ends. Now, that doesn't mean they can just put whatever they like. They would have to, so if a degree, say at Swinburne University, said that you needed to do a certain number of second-year subjects and third-year subjects in a history major, you would still have to complete that. And most universities would require you to have at least 1 year of your 3 years of study as part of that university. So it's not a free-for-all, but it is a platform that does allow greater flexibility. It's also useful, for example, we have a number of universities now offer Korean language and Korean studies, but not every university. I think there's only 2 of the 9 universities in Melbourne have Korean studies. But you could take that, you could do Korean from another university by using this platform.
Thank you.
I hope that's clearer.
Yes.
Professor Kim.
You know my name.
I do, and you know my name is a poem.
I didn't come to North Korea. Another Kim in North Korea. Thank you very much for your outstanding presentation, and your performance is wonderful.
Oh, thank you. You're very
And
generous.
then I like the terminology collaboration, teamwork. So in concluding your presentation, I would suggest you speak out the poem Eliot. Please, 1 or 2 sentences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. Professor Kim is intrigued that my surname, Elliot, which is a very common Scottish name, is also a poem. Sadly, I don't know the poem, but I'm going to Google it immediately I leave the room. So I can't give you the poem. He wants me to speak it, but I'm sorry. You'll have to Google it also. My apologies.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Maria Teresita Macana Semana from the Philippines. And I'm one of the representatives for the ASEAN Cyber University. Thank you so much for your inputs, but my attention was caught on Australian qualification framework. And I do understand that this is participated by 9 universities from Australia. So who managed the Australian qualification framework? Is it led by your government and all the 9 universities followed? And is there any instances that you have also partnership from outside Australia? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Maria, it's lovely to have you here from the Philippines. I have a very good colleague, Gisela, at the University of the Philippines. The Australian qualifications framework is set by the Australian federal government. We have to, for our students to have recognised degrees, we have to conform to the qualifications framework. And every university in Australia conforms to this, as does every private provider of, for example, mechanics training or hairdressing training or whatever training. It all fits within a framework that goes from level 1 to level 10 being doctoral studies, level 4 being undergraduate degree. So that framework is set in place. We are not allowed to go outside that. It works very well. We do have very many international collaborations, particularly because Monash has 8,000 students at our campus in Kuala Lumpur. We have students in Suzhou, in Jiangsu. We have students at Mumbai and in Prato, which is just outside Florence. So we have many campuses with many international collaborations and have research collaboration and student exchange collaborations. We're very fortunate to have such an international footprint.
May I have follow-up question? It is our concern in ACU to have credit recognition or transfer. And for that, for me, it is very vital for ACU members to have this qualification framework. The way I see it, in Australia, it is really easy because you have your Australian qualification framework. So whether the student will be enrolling in any of universities, definitely the credit will be recognized. But it will be a very big issue when we talk about ASEAN being 10 member countries with different framework and different guidelines and different qualification standards. And thank you so much for sharing. However, just a follow-up question. The reason I ask if you have partnership is if you have partners from outside Australia, will these partner universities should also follow Australian qualification framework?
No. Well, when our students study abroad, when our students study abroad, we translate the credit that they have done in their study abroad in our partners or other universities, we translate that into credits. So they may have had a semester at the University of the Philippines. We would give them 24 credits for that semester, provided that the level of learning was at the level we wanted it to be, which it would be because they're a good quality partner. So those 24 credits would go towards their Australian degree. So we have to translate all the other systems into our system. But I agree, it is very, very easy for us to translate into the one system with one shared language than it is for 10 nations. I think that I've been working very closely with India for years trying to get credit transfer. And until the government really says, we will do this, it's just, we just keep talking. It's not really happening. But I would strongly believe that the 10 nation members of ASEAN would need to say, we're going to do this. We will lock our leaders in a room without food and water till they sort it out. But it won't be easy. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience of OUA. Thank you so much. Please give her a big round of applause. Our next speaker is Professor William von Valkenburg. He is waiting in his office in Netherlands to do the video conferencing with all of us. Just give us 1 or 2 minutes so that you will see his face on the screen. Professor Valkenburg, he is a part of a leadership of TU Delft in Netherlands, and he is also a vice president of Open Education Consortium. He's going to give us a lecture, or not a lecture, he's going to give us a presentation about the long-run impact of MOOC. Since the beginning of MOOC, it was about year 2012. It's been about half a decade. The MOOC has been in a spread all around the world. But from the starting point, it was like a buzzword in year 2012, but not anymore. So why? We're curious about. And he's going to give us not the answer, but the points that we could think of. Are we connected? So can you see his face? Professor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Professor, just for testing, can you speak a little bit? And can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Unfortunately, I can't. I have a couple arrangement, and I'm getting down with a little cold, so my voice is not best today, but I hope you can hear me clearly.
So,
Everything set up?
yes, I think so. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. So you can start, Professor.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute a little bit. I also have too much voice. Yes. All right. Yeah. Good morning. It's here, but good afternoon to you in Korea. I'm going to talk about the long-run impact of MOOCs. To start off with a small introduction of my university, it's Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. We are in what we say classical brick-and-mortar engineering school. We have quite some bachelor master programs and now 24,000 students distributed over 8 faculties. Our education is only in science, engineering, and we've got a mute you because it's for now. So you see here our programs, and I think an important thing for us is our research. Of course, we're a research university, and that's most of our research is focused on energy, infrastructure, health, and global impacts. The UN Global Development Goals are an important driver for our research. This talk will be about the long-run impacts of MOOCs, and I used Amar's law for that. We tend to overestimate the impact of a new technology in the short run, but we underestimate it in the long run. And I think that's the case with MOOCs, so that's what I will talk about today. An alternative version of this Amar's law is what a lot of people will know as Gartner's hype cycle. So we had a hype, and then there's a disillusionment, and then you get to the plateau of productivity. And that's where we're heading with the MOOCs, at least in my university. And I see different things around the world. So a little bit introduction about our open and online program, the impact our program has on the short run, but really the long-term impact on the university and some conclusions. So in 2014, the university decided that they want to be active in the field of open and online education. In 2013, we already started with some MOOCs, but in 2014, we started a big initiative. It's called the Delft Extension School, and that was a big program focused on really getting a position in open and online education in the world. And that was led by a dean and a director of education. We had a research and innovation side and a support side. My responsibility was mainly the support side, so really supporting teachers in creating MOOCs, blended education, and online courses. Our goals were educate the world and improve the quality of education. So on one side, reaching out to the world and sharing our knowledge, with the other side of using that to improve our own quality of education. At the end, we also have to look for a revenue model for the university. You see here all the different goals, but not going into that detail. If we look at the products we are offering, we started with OpenCourseWare. That actually started already in 2007, and that's just sharing the course materials of our campus courses on a website with an open license so that everyone can use that. And in 2013, we started with the MOOCs. I think most of you are familiar with that. We offer them on the edX platform that's founded by Harvard and MIT. We were the first European partner to join edX, and we have currently, I think, 95 MOOCs on that platform. I think later in 2014, we started with what we call professional education. So really courses for the lifelong learners, for working professionals, courses that fully online offered for them. And those courses are not for the massive numbers of the MOOCs, but smaller numbers of students. They get more attention, they pay a higher price, and they get the continuous education units and a course certificate. And then the last one we have is what we call the online academic courses. Those are the online variants of an existing campus course. So that is a fully accredited course and part of a master program of our university. So actually it can lead up to a full master degree online. And important for our strategy was that we used all our online activities, also used it in a blended way on campus. So in that way it was changing our campus education as well. So looking at the short-term impacts, really looking at the impact, we've now reached more than 2 million enrollments in our MOOCs, 2,000 enrollments in our professional education, 450 enrollments in our online courses. We won some awards, and we have quite some offering. So 90 MOOCs it says here, but I think it's already 95 and more courses. What for us was really important, what we've been doing actively is getting awards. Because traditionally our teachers are actually researchers that are teaching, and with an education award they could show that they are doing something really good in education, and that helps them in their career. And it's not just about how many research papers they are publishing. So for the first time with open and online education, they could really show their education to the world. Here you see the enrollments in our courses. What you typically see in almost all MOOCs is that you have a couple of what we call blockbusters that attract the high number of enrollments, and then a long tail. And the last couple of years, when we started, the average was about 10,000 enrollments. Now the average is around 5,000 enrollments in a MOOC. And it's getting harder and harder to get to a blockbuster. And that's also a blockbuster means you will get some more revenue from the certificates. Our most successful program is solar energy with almost 200,000 enrollments. And that's also why we started. We have added extra courses around solar energy, and also those are very popular. If we're going to look at the long-term impacts, I see 5 impacts, and I will discuss them this afternoon for you. So from courses to programs to credits, from a national to a global world of education, from initial education to continuous education, from traditional lecture room to blended learning, and towards open education. So from courses to programs to credits. So when we started with our MOOCs, here you see an overview of our MOOCs, those were only individual courses. We used a tender system to that teachers could write a proposal that they wanted to create a MOOC, and they would, if it gets accepted, they would receive funding and support from my team to create the MOOC. And along the way, we found out, hey, what are the topics we're focusing on? So we defined like 9 themes that we're focusing on, because not all MOOCs are that interesting to offer online, but also from our perspective, from our university. You see a lot of the programs that are important for our university. And more important is that a lot of them are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, the affordable and clean energy is directly aligned with the goal number 7 of the UN SDGs. Others are into the whole. There are more options, like in medical and environmental technologies, that relates to 3 SDGs. And then what we started to notice and got questions about is that learners were interested in a little bit more than a single course. So that's the way we started with what we call short learning programs. So group courses into a program to guide the learner through a relevant learning path to obtain a relevant certificate. The first ones we added were X series. It was very loosely connected. And I think after that we added the professional certificate program, and that's really focused on gaining the skills and knowledge for working professionals. And the last one is the MicroMaster, and that is really connected to our master program on campus. So actually when you complete the MicroMaster and you get admitted to the campus master program, you get a waiver for the courses you already done in the MicroMaster. So it saves you time on campus. So that saves money, but also less time away from home. If we look at our professional certificate programs, here you see an overview of the programs. Our most successful program currently is around electric cars, and that's very popular. And here you also see that we were one of the first to offer a program around that, and then you get a lot of attention. It's the same with, I said, with solar energy, because we were the first one to offer a MOOC in that field. There are not a lot of other MOOCs, and then we started with our MicroMaster program on solar energy and engineering, and it also is very popular. What's important that we offer different kinds of credits to these courses. So our professional certificate programs and our profit courses, learners will receive CAUs. That's really credits for professionals, for worldwide standards. So a lot of people can use them to meet their yearly professionalization targets. The MicroMaster is connected to our master programs. And then the last one is what we did is started an initiative that our own students could get credits for MOOCs. And that's really, we call it a virtual exchange program. So a student from, let's say, from my university can do a MOOC at Rice University and will get credit for it at my university. And that means that our students have many more courses to choose from in their elective space. And we're doing that with quite some universities now. And we said that we want to start with a select group of universities that we trust, that we know, that they will offer a good quality, because that's still important, because it will be part of our own program. We have students all over universities all over the world, from University of Queensland in Australia to Rice University in the US, but also Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and many other universities. So this is really helping students to use those MOOCs into their regular education and get credit for it. Then going from a national to a global world of education. I don't know the situation in Korea, but what we see in the Netherlands is that education is getting global. And here are some graph will show you. If in our bachelor programs currently it's only 7% international students, but that's mostly because it's all in Dutch. In our master programs that are in English, it's already 34%. And in our PhD programs, it's already 2/3 is international students. In our online paid education, it's 75% international, and in the MOOCs, it's actually 97% is international. So only 3% is from the Netherlands. And I think this trend will continue to develop. So we'll see that we're not competing with the university that's next door, but we're competing with the universities in other countries. And that means you will really have to stand out as a university and show why should you study here. And what we see is that our MOOCs are also used around the world. So here are some examples where other universities are using our MOOCs in classes around the world. For us, this is part of our goal of educating the world. we share our MOOCs also with an open license, so anyone is allowed to do that. So here's the picture you see is a classroom of a course about functional programming, and the students are in a classroom in India. And there are many more examples we have from Argentina to Vietnam and different places around the world where they're using our MOOCs. What we also see is their MOOCs and online education is really a need for the working professional. Really, it's not just for initial education, but really for continuous education. And you see that in the numbers of the MOOC learner. So the average age of MOOC learners in our courses is like 29. They already have a bachelor or master degree in most, and they want to continue to educate themselves. And I think that's a general trend, is that the knowledge you gain at the university used to be valuable for many years, 20, 30 years. You could continue to work on that, but I think the halftime of your education is shorter and shorter, so you have to keep up with the knowledge and skills you need for your work. And in that trend, we see that actually most of the learners in our MOOCs are working professionals, and that will continue. And that's also what new initiatives we're focusing on are really on. How can we help the working professionals in keeping up in their skills? And important part of that is really making the connection with the companies, because they know best what kind of skills they need for their employees. So we're actually working, creating a lot of our MOOCs together with the companies, and so that we can make sure it aligns with what their employees, or what not only their, but what most usually global needs. So, for example, we created the Circular Economy MOOC together with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who's really focused on circular economy worldwide, and already has a lot of connections with big companies, Renault, Unilever, and a lot of others, and they helped creating that MOOC. The Leadership for Engineer, we created that course together with people from McKinsey. Really on what do the leaders need for that. The data analysis MOOC we created together with Deloitte and others. So it really helps make that connection, and it makes the course much more valuable. And what we see is that actually the courses we created this way for the working professional, if we use them on campus for our own students also profit from that, because it makes their education much better aligned with their future work. And then what we see on campus is that we're changing from the traditional lecture room to blended learning. And I think many of you have seen this image. This is currently, I think, the situation in most classes, that students are all sitting with their laptop in front of them, and if you're not watching, paying attention, they already clicked to Facebook. So this means that you really have to change your education. And what our university defined is we want to move our campus education to a right blend of online and on-campus education. So really, how can we make use of online education in our campus education to get the best of both? Where one of the things we've been working on is the classroom. A lot of classes are all set up for frontal teaching. And what we actually started to look at is different ways of what type of activities do we do in the classroom, and what is the best setup for different classes. So from frontal teaching, a mixed practice, and switching between frontal teaching and group work collaboration. And that during 1 hour of class, you will switch a couple of times. a lot of classrooms are not set up for that. So we've been working on this, and this is the work of my colleagues, and they created what we call a cookbook for educational spaces. It really helped to define what kind of classes are we creating. Actually, we just opened a new building with classrooms, and there's no classroom, no classroom that's just for frontal teaching. All classrooms in that building are set up for the mixed practice, so you can easily switch between frontal teaching and group work grouped together. And all power outlets everywhere, there are whiteboards, so it's really about collaboration in the classroom. Part of our initiatives here is that we're currently working on a European project. It's called the Embed project. And that's focusing on developing a maturity model for blended education. On 3 different levels. So on course level, so how to blend your course, but also on meso level, so how to organize your institute and what does it mean to make it blended. So for example, the classrooms, but also policies and how the rostering is done. To governmental policies. For example, in some countries, teachers get paid by the amount of hours they spend in the classroom. And so if they switch to blended learning, they will spend less time in the classroom and get less pay. That doesn't help for making blended learning a success. You can find more information on this on the website. And then towards open education. What's here important, first of all, what is open education? It's really about open sharing and that's improving access and to a worldwide audience. And with the digital world, the costs of sharing are almost zero. So there's no reason not to do it anymore. Important there is that open is not the same as free. A lot of people say, hey, it's available, I put it on YouTube, but it doesn't mean that you are allowed to reuse it. So open means free plus permissions. And these are the permissions. And so it allows you to retain, to reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute the content you can see. And that means that if you see different sources, you can remix that together to really fix the context of your course, of your university. For my universities, this is one of the important drivers in our strategic framework. So openness is all throughout that program. And so we're working very hard in helping teachers and researchers to really be open. So not open education, but also open access, open science, open data, and using open source software. So instead of all commercial products, we're starting to use open source software, what we're teaching our students. And that's an important driver in our university and in the new strategic framework. And one of the benefits of making your things open is that others can reuse your MOOCs and even what we call localize your MOOCs. So here are some examples where institutes around the world have taken our MOOCs and translated that into their local language. Kinok did that in Vietnam, Asuka Academy did in Japan, Adrak in the Arabic world, and Xiaiteng in China. And that's for us really important because it means educating the world. It's sharing our knowledge, and more people can learn from our MOOCs and can see the knowledge we have. And I think that's one of the things that open makes possible. Hearing more about the Kinok problem. I think one of the great things here is that it's crowdsourced, so there's no big organization. It's just founded by a couple of young Vietnamese people with a passion for education. I'm It was already mentioned, I'm Vice President of the Open Education Consortium, and as a consortium, we have about 250 organizations that are member of our, and will help them in working on open education and sharing, helping each other in organizing projects and meetups to share our experience and how to do this the best way. Take a look at the website. Then going to the conclusion, this was where last in July in Bangkok, and I thought this was interesting because although it looks like chaos, it's actually everyone is almost moving in the same direction, and I think that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I try to explain this afternoon. So I started off with this, the long-run impact, and I think, at least in my university, I can really see that long-term impact, that MOOCs are changing our university. And that's not what's in the speed that everyone expected in the beginning, but it is changing. And I think that's the whole case with Amara's law. And we tend to overestimate the impact of the technology in the short run, but we underestimate it in the long run. And I think that's the case with MOOCs. So we have been doing now 5 years of MOOCs, and now I can say, hey, the MOOCs are really changing our education. I know a lot of people said in the beginning when we started with MOOCs that it would all universities would have to change. I think in the end they will change, but it takes much more time than everyone expected. So thank you very much. This was half an hour, and I'll put on some sound. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. Do you? Professor, can you hear me?
Time for questions?
Yes. Do you have time for question, Professor?
Yes, I have time.
Is there any question?
I do hear a lot of echo if I turn your sound on. So maybe it's best to ask the question via the chat. Is that possible?
Professor, because we are sure. Professor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you have any question for him about long run of MOOC? Okay.
This is Kim from Korea. And you are Wonder Man, I think. And especially you are the voice from the field, industry and company. And then we really hope we will meet again. Thank you very much. Your wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He just
Thank you.
commented to your presentation.
Yeah, I can say that.
Because he is also short of time for his busy schedule, I think I'm going to collect. If you have more questions later, then please let us have your questions and I will deliver them to him by email. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and it was really good presentation. Thank you. Please give him a round of applause. I'm really sorry for the howling, echoing. I'm really sorry for your inconvenience. Our last presenter today is Mr. Nguyen Hoai Nam from Vietnam. He is a senior officer at Policy Division for ICT in Education, ICT Department, Ministry of Education and Training in Vietnam. He has been with the ministry for almost 15 years. Some of you may remember that from previous presenters, all the environment stages, levels of education, levels of IT infrastructure, laws and regulations in ASEAN countries are all different. Today, Mr. Nam is going to give us about the progress in Vietnam government in terms of online education policies. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me to standing here and talking about the higher education in Vietnam. There are a lot of things that we can talk about the higher education in Vietnam, but today I will focus on the online e-learning in Vietnam. This is the content I will talk today. And to begin for my presentation, I would like to start with a very short story about the higher education in Vietnam. Actually, just before the 1950, in Vietnam, we have only 3 universities. And to the 1990, in Vietnam also, they just only have 20 universities, very, very small one. However, after 10 years or more than 10 years, we have a blooming in number of higher education institutions. Up to now, we have more than 200 universities. Every year, we have more than 1.7 million students and more than 70,000 faculty numbers. Now let's see the number. You can see that the ratio of student per faculty staff member, about 20 students per one faculty staff. The ratio is very high to ensure about the quality of higher education. And every year, the number of new students to enter to the university around more than 400,000 students. Now, let's remember this number for a while. We will continue in the next session, next slide. It is not enough if we talk about the higher education in Vietnam without talking about the national examination to enter university. In Vietnam, it is a very, very stressful exam for students, for high school students to enter university. Before the 2015, in Vietnam, there are 2 examinations. One examination for high school students to graduate, and the other exam for students to enter the national for entering the university. Everybody in Vietnam, every house, every family, very concerned about the 2 examinations. And after the 2015, the ministry make a new progress. They combine 2 examinations for 2 purposes in one examination for 2 purposes. Just only one examination for high school to graduate, and they use that result to enter to the university. However, if you can see in the table, you can see that the number of high school students attend to graduation exam is higher to 2 times to the number of students that can get the admission to enter the university. So where are the other students go? Some choose to drop out, and some to continue with vocational training. But now we keep remember about this time. I will continue it in the next slide. Every year, every 10 years, Vietnam government make a strategic plans for national education. And in the strategic plan from 2010 and 2020, there are some indicator for the higher education. Now, as you see that, in the previous slide, I said that only half of high school students they can get into university, but the other one, where they go? Now you can see. Actually, that's other student who can get the, because we have the other half of high school student, but here's the target says that we just need only 30% of high school student will get the vocational training, but actually in reality, the number is much more lower, just only 8.5% of the number of students can get into the vocational training. So there are a gap between the student gets the higher education and the student gets the vocational training and the student who choose drop out of the system. But somebody said that the government should make some better policy for higher education to raise the number of students in who can get into the university, because we see that the target 2020 more than 300 of students, but 1 million people can get into university. But actually that is still a very small one. But somebody also said that government should make some more policy for higher, for training, for vocational training, so that students who graduates from high school, they can streaming to the vocational training, so that they will get better job. They will get better job after graduates. But however, in reality, the number is still very small. The vocational training, it belongs to the Ministry of Labor in Vietnam. And for the higher education, to make the thing more better, we are in the current reforming process. And for the reforming process, we set some targets like that. Set up the required minimum knowledge and escape from the perception of the higher education was simply considered as vocational training. The time before, in Vietnam, we just think that people just think that training after higher education just for get a better job. Now we should need rethinking about that. We're thinking that higher education in Vietnam should be more academic, so that we can get better advance in news technology and we get advance in economics. And the one that I want to mention here is that for about 7 years, ago, we replacing the year-based course with credits-based training. Maybe in your country, maybe you don't know about how the year-based course, because you may not familiar with year-based course. But in Vietnam, for long years ago, every student study with the same class, the same course, and the same thing, same teacher. So that we want to make it more better and more like the developed country. So we replace year-based course with credits-based training. It's also the crucial indicator, crucial condition for making the online learning reality. However, up till now, after 7 years, the credit-based training is not trained, not different with the year-based learning before. Students still choose to learn together in the same class, choose to learn the same course in the same class. That's hilarious in Vietnam. But we continue to modify our policy to make the credit-based training more reality in Vietnam. And the other one I want to mention here is that establish a new type of higher education institution in Vietnam. In Vietnam, now we have some kind of higher education institution like that. We have a national education, like Seoul National University. This kind of university have different colleges inside, as other national university in other country. And we have a very special one, the university with training only one field, and we have the university which collaborates with other institutions in the world and in the other country to make collaboration program. Recently, we have one kind of excellent higher education institution. What is excellent mean here? This kind of university is from it belongs to the Vietnam government, but it collaborates with other country government. Now we have 4 excellent university. One collaborates with Germany, one collaborates with Japanese, and one collaborates with, I'm not sure about the other 2. But we want that 4 university should be the pioneer to bring the new type of learning, new type of event in teaching and learning and research, so that they can raise the place for the other university to follow them to make the education in higher education better. But actually that for 4 years making the excellent university, up to now the expectation is not met yet. And we also want to promote another type of higher education institution in Vietnam, that is a cyber university. We want to make it like the model, the cyber university like in Korea, from admission to get degree awards, everything taking online. However, the examination should be doing on-site, not online. Now, I would like to move to the vision of our MUET about the e-learning. We think about e-learning are tools that improve the educational quality with less cost and more effectively. And we think that e-learning could bring equity in access quality education service between student and disadvantaged area, which student in urban area. If you know about the region of Vietnam, there are a lot of mountains, a lot of rivers, and the condition is not good for students to travel from place to place to get a better quality of education. So this is the thing that we want to promote by e-learning to bring equity in access quality education to everybody in difficult area. And we also think that e-learning is the best tool for deploying learning society program. In Vietnam, now we are doing a very, very big program about society program, in which mostly we deploy ICT system to support for this kind of program. For example, we gather learning resource, teaching resource, and everything to a kind of national database so that everybody can access to this database to access the learning course and learning material and everything without free and without barrier about the region, about the geographies. Recently, in 2007, in the early 2007, the government issued a master plan of ICT in education. In the master plan, their duty that the Ministry of Education have to do is that up to 2020, we have to develop and disseminate some cyber university model. At this time, we just stop at the model, not the real university. But also in this master plan, the vision is to 2025. Up to 2025, we have to have at least one cyber university. For that reason, we are going to prepare in policy step by step. In 2016, the first time in the Ministry of Education or in the education system, we have a real policy, a real officer document that said about the online training in higher education. This is a circular number 12. And in this circular, we define some minimum condition like that. We have to, we guide every university the principle or the minimum principle for effectively implementing the online training. We guide university with the component of e-learning system for online training. What should we have here? The LMS, the infrastructure, the condition about assurance, quality assurance, the personnel for implementing online training also cover in this circular. For example, in Vietnam, previous time, before we have this circular, the e-learning in Vietnam blooming in general education, not in higher education. Everybody does e-learning. Every teacher do e-learning. Actually, that's in general education in Vietnam. Teacher can make e-learning course by themselves with using some authoring tool like presenter, like articulate, and something else. They can produce the learning content by themselves. And however, with the higher education, many people, many teachers still feel hesitate to do that thing. Maybe teaching face-to-face more easy and some kind like that. So that we make a guideline how to implement effective online training. How many person, which type of person should involve into making the content for online training and involved in the training by online training. And after this circular issue, in Vietnam, there are a lot of universities have developed their own system and developed system for support for traditional training. And in this circular, we also stop at as the expectations that e-learning just support for training or for traditional training using blended learning methods. At this time, we not mention about full e-learning yet, full online learning yet. Another policy that's very important to the online training in higher education is that the circular about regulation on distance education in higher education. In this circular, it says that distance learning can be implemented online or offline. And if the distance learning deploy online, they have to have some condition. Firstly, they have to an IT system to manage all learning activity of learners, all the progress of learner when they join into the e-learning system. This system have to record everything of learner and teacher working on the online system. And also, online distance education must meet the requirement of the circular 10. This is the 12. I'm sorry, the 12. The previous circular for the condition. Here is another thing about the online learning. Actually, that's as I previously said, that the online learning is more blooming in general education in Vietnam than the higher education. I'm preparing for teacher to be familiar with online training and also to reduce the cost of training for teacher every year. This circular, this policy says that up to 2020, 70% of annual training cost for teacher have to done via online environment. This is a step that makes the teacher more familiar with the online training so that in the future, if the institution organize online training, they already have a thing that's in their mind about how online training work and how to go with online training when they are the teacher to teach course for online training. In terms of recognition of diplomas and credits exchange, actually that's in this time we don't recognize diploma from online training program of the institution outside of our country, but the institution inside the country, if they get the approval of the Ministry of Education, for example, many of distance education, the training of universities, they organize by online training. they still can get the diploma. But that is for distance learning, not for the academics learning, yes. And from anyway, is the other is other university outside our country, if they want to get the if they want to have to get the recognition of their diploma, they can make collaboration with with the university in Vietnam, and the program have to be approved and gets permit from the Ministry of Education. So the diploma will be recognition. However, for the credit transfer, is still the thing. At this time, we are making a new draft of the higher education law. In this higher education law, it is the first time the online training is mentioned in this law. And in this law, we talk about the recognition of diploma with the condition of building quality standards. We are building quality standards for professional faculty members. It is the capacity of teacher, the necessary of infrastructure, and especially for training program, which means the quality of training is world. With this kind of standards, in the future, if other university outside of Vietnam, if they want to have the diploma recognition in Vietnam and have the credit exchange, they must meet the quality standards by this law, so that the credit exchange can be done. And also, there are some more conditions, like quality assurance condition should be recognized by, approved by MOET. Then we can recognize the diploma and credits from online training. I would like to move to some practical on online training in Vietnam. There are a lot of examples for online training in Vietnam, but I choose two of the most prominent example. The first one is ASEU Cyber University, which we are doing now, and we heard from the morning to now. This one puts at the Hanoi University of Science and Technology, and the project started from 2009, but implemented from 2012, and up to now, they also get various many successful story in this project. And the other one from the Hanoi Open University. This project started from 2015, also supported by Korean government through KOICA. This project at this time is ends this project, and this project also get in the Hanoi Open University. They are the university who, besides the academic programs, they also have the duty to teach about the distance learning, and they have thousands of cooperation program outside of country and also to the other university, and they mostly do it online. By this project, the online cost in this university now costs about more than 1,000 costs, and more than 10,000 students already take the course on that program. It is also a very successful one, and besides this one, besides the Hanoi University of Science and Technology, we, the Ministry of Education, also want to promote this university to be one of two new cyber university up to 2025. And we are doing with them very detail to make sure that the project should be done successful to meet the requirement of the master plan. Yeah. Also about the online training for the teacher, is this one also about a very prominent project in which I should talk about more about this one, because we are in the reforming of curriculum, national curriculum for K-12, and we have to retrain our teacher. Our teacher at the general education in more than 1.2 million teacher, a very big one. How to retrain them? Previous time we just only retrain for the teacher at the summer with very short time. But now for the new program, new kind of teaching, how to retraining for 1.2 million of teacher just only by using online training, it would be make the thing effectively. So that at this time we also have this this kind of online training for our teacher, so they can get retraining every time, every year, every time in the year, so it will miss the demand of the time for deploying the new program of new column in the K-12 in 2019. Before end of my presentation, I would like to say more about the potential for online training in Vietnam. According to the Ambient Insight report, they indicate that the online training in Vietnam, the online training market in Vietnam is the fastest growing market in the world. About 44% of growth rate will take place in periods of 2000 up to 2018. And in the population of Vietnam, there are more than 40% of population get connected to the internet. The smartphone is very popular in Vietnam, even in the distant area. And each year, Vietnamese spend 3 to 4 billion to send their children to abroad for studying. This one, plus with the preparing in policy for making online training feasible, we believe that in near future, the online training in Vietnam will blooming more and more, and the markets will be open for every organization. But we recognize that there are two factors which determine the success of an e-learning provider in Vietnam. The first is the credibility of diploma, and the second is the quality of core service. At this time, the credibility of diploma is still gets many controversy. However, the quality of core service, it is a thing that company and private sector are doing very well. And actually, that in Vietnam there are two private companies. They already export the online training system and online training service to outside. I don't know if you heard about the Topica group. the export the training, online training to Philippines, to Tahiti, and some other country, and another one, the Phoenix. The Phoenix group also a very famous online training service in Vietnam. They provide the online training service for university who where they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have a good service to make the distance learning. This thing that I believe that in Vietnam, the thing will make the online training in Vietnam growing fast in near future. Thank you.
Mr. Nam, thank you for your presentation. From this point, we are going to have a panel discussion. So the presenters, the previous presenters who are still in this room, please proceed to the front and have a seat. We have Dr. Choltis from ASEAN University Network. He gave us an insight what kind of distinguishable feature that ASEAN Cyber University should have. Also, the AUN experience of ASEAN higher education. The second, Dr. Emma Yun, she also gave us an insight of what was the progress of ACU research team to develop models and strategies for establishing ASEAN Cyber University. Finally, Mr. Nam from Vietnam, he gave us an insightful information about policy development in Vietnam to enhance online education. So from now on, I'm going to open our discussion to the floor. So you could have, well, if you have any question, please raise your hand and then you can ask any of us, any of these presenters about your curiosity, about your questions. Any comments or any concerns or any question?
Thank you all for giving us the insightful presentations. I was so motivated to learn the e-learning ASEAN Cyber Universities. I have one question to the senior officer from Vietnam. My name is Uni Cho, and I'm undergraduate student majoring in politics. So I have a questions about like politics in Vietnam, and I heard that there is some challengings, implementing some education policies because of the ideologies in Vietnam. And can you share some ideas how the government and Department of Educations, collaborating each other?
Thank you for your. Actually, that's the politic view in Vietnam at this time is very open, especially just in education. Our ministry set up several forums and several online service for people to make to give the voice to our ministries so that we can adjust policy for very quickly. Actually, that's I remember the years we changed our law for for the general law for education, and also for the, higher education law. Uh, just about 5 years ago, this law has been public, but in previous time, uh, every time to public laws, and then the law will distance very, very long time. But now, the time to train the law take a very short time. Also, uh, it can it can be said that the progress with, in education in Vietnam at this time, not only the domestic market and domestic provider prefer. Also, we also have a new decree to support for the providing education from outside Vietnam to students in Vietnam. So that at this time, there are several university and also organization, foreigner organization. They organize their own education institution in Vietnam for purpose of education. I don't know, that's, is this satisfied for your question? Yeah.
Any other question? Anything came up your mind?
Yes, yes. Thank you. I just, well, as a member of ACO research team, I just I think it is a very good implication. I believe that is a quite nice question about the policies, because I believe that policy about e-learning and cyber education is not only about issue in Vietnam, is in other member countries, and Korea is the same. Because since I joined in this research, and one thing one of the critical things I've encountered is policy. How to catch up on the changes in the market and the demands of cyber education, and those demands and atmosphere go very fast, but the policy is just to chase differences. So one thing I just pointed out, that how to catch up on, how to narrow the gaps between the atmosphere and policy. And the other things, I just thought that in that case, maybe the capacities of the government to produce or to make a response to the demands of the market or service, and maybe the capacities of the capabilities of the staffs of the public officers is quite also important. Yes.
So she mentioned about how to decrease the gap between the trends changes and to the policy policy implementation. Do you have any other question or comments? Yes.
Thank you very much. All of you did wonderful, outstanding symposium and coordinating excellent. I would say one thing. I am consulting the Samsung and SK and Hyosung. Those companies got factory in Vietnam and wherever there, and we will do some task force for money, and then I will join there. And then everybody here for wonderful memory. The gentleman lady who took photo here and then come out. I am the cameraman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, at the back.
Thank you very much for your presentation and panel discussion. I I think the government policy is a main key important to make your e-learning environment better than now. However, I think the MOET needs to allow the outsiders, such as foreign companies or some institutions from other countries. I think, is there any plan or your idea to allow other partners or other companies outside?
Are you asking to Mr. Nam?
Yes, this is a
Yes.
question for yeah, Mr. Nam.
Everybody's going to ask it.
And I was just said that we have just issued a new decree that allows outside company, outside education organization and university that can invest into education in Vietnam. However, we also, because of we concerning about the quality, so that we also set some barrier. Just need to make some barrier to assure that if they come to Vietnam, they will bring something better than other thing in Vietnam, and they will make something better, not reinvent the way or something like that, like bring something that not good to Vietnam. So that's very practical condition. For example, you should have the representative in Vietnam to support for other thing inside if there is something happens, and you have to have as you have to meet some requirement of quality assurance. For example, for the curriculum, for infrastructures, and for the content, something else. If you meet the demand, you can invest in Vietnam and you can make your profits. And also, there are one way at this time, many universities outside Vietnam doing is that they make a corporate program with the inside university in Vietnam, so that they will make, for example, agreements in provide educational program that meets the requirement of quality assurance, so that you can operate your education activity in Vietnam. So it is certified.
Thank you. Any other comments or question? Yes.
So just one more question. I have a question for Dr. Yan. Yeah. While listening to your presentations, one idea just came across to my mind. And if there is any plans for giving internship opportunities for the students who graduate from ACU, because like there is some international organizations in Philippines or Bangkok. So if there is any plan for giving like internship opportunities for the ACU students who graduate.
Thank you for your question, and I believe that you give one of the good things that we need to take a consideration, because so far, as I told you, this is very beginning of for the designing model of ACU. So absolutely, one of the key features I've introduced is employability. for the employability, even the existing higher education institutes, even the government encourage the internship program or the on-the-job program for the helping learners to get experienced and to have the more practical soft skills adaptable for the working demands of the working places. So, well, I think that we just keep in mind and we try to maybe basically this model cannot explain everything, and this model can deal with every details of it. But I believe that a core part of this model is education institute. So for considering the tangible results, and education institute absolutely consider that your suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, can I have one for Dr. Choltis? Yes. Because you are thinking of the collaboration and cooperation of universities and countries in ASEAN and Korea for establishing future ASEAN Cyber University. One of the major things that when we think of cooperation is, especially in higher education, we need to think of quality assurance. For example, at OUA, the previous presenter Professor Susan Elliott, she mentioned us that Australian quality assurance framework. And then, as far as I'm understanding, that there had been activities and projects ongoing in AUN about quality assurance. So for that part, can you explain a little bit about your activities and your goal for the quality assurance?
Thank you very much for your question on the qualification framework and the quality assurance. In fact, within the ASEAN region, we have the umbrella qualification framework done by the agency called AQAN, which is the network of all the national quality assurance and accreditation from all 10 ASEAN countries. They got together and come up with ASEAN qualification framework, if I remember the name correctly. You must know better than me. It's from the accreditation body, the national accreditation body, meaning that they are they got the legal. They got the all the university must comply. That's the meaning of national accreditation body within each ASEAN country. That's the level of legal binding. But for the AUN is below that level. AUN is doing only the quality assurance, which is the activities to ensure that the teaching and learning within the university at the study program level or at the degree level is done with a certain standards. Especially the process have been done with a certain standard. It's a voluntary basis. AUNQA has no legal binding, no legal enforcement, no legal enforcement at all. It's done by a voluntary basis, meaning that each study program at the university are willing to apply to get the AUN QA assessment, and we send out the assessor, which is the team of assessor which come from the university in Southeast Asia only. So it's done by the peer-to-peer based on trust only, because we have no legal force to, we don't call ourselves accreditation body, unlike the AQAN, ACAN, which come from the network of national accreditation body. They got the legal force. AUN has no legal force. But the force we uphold is the professional force and trust. That's why AUNQA is the most successful regional quality assurance framework in the region, because at the end of the day, it is trust only that drive implementation. Even though you get the legal framework out, you try to enforce the qualification framework, whatever you call it. At the end of the day, is about trust that drive forward the real implementation. And what we are looking for here is the change of the culture. We are not looking for legal compliance that everyone can do at the in appearance. What AUNQA aim for is a change in the culture, in the academic culture itself. That's for the long term. But we work together with AUNQA is a partner of AQAN also. We work together with the legal entity.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And any other question or comments? Well, it's about the time that we need to wrap up our session. I'm sure you may have more questions later and then think that, oh, I should have asked. So we will give you a chance to have your questions later. There is an email address. There should be an email address in your booklet. So if you have questions regarding any of the specific presentation or anything about ASEAN Cyber University project, then please let us know using email. Then we will get back to you with appropriate answers. Again, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for joining us today until this late. And then I hope this experience with all of our presenters and the questions and answers, I guess it will help your work in your profession, in your career, when you go back to your home country or when you go back to your work. Thank you so much, and let us see each other again next year. Thank you. Before dismissing, I have one announcement. When you receive the booklet, e-learning Korea booklet, there is a paper of survey question. Please submit that survey after filling it out, and then you will get a present. That's what I've heard. Yes, when you're submitting that questionnaire, then you will get some present. So please don't forget to submit your questionnaire to the staff of e-learning Korea. Thank you.